Hello everybody, good afternoon, good evening and good morning to wherever you are. My name's Kevin May, I'm the editor and co-founder of Tnooz.com. Welcome to another episode of TnoozLIVE. This is our monthly, bi-monthly kind of panel show where we take a look at some of the hot topics of the last couple of weeks and then have a deeper dive into some of the other things that are going on. I'm absolutely delighted to say that we're being supported on this one by Bynd, which is part of the Momentum Design Lab, and Tealeaf, which as many of you will know is now an IBM company. So thank you very much to Bynd and Tealeaf. We're very gracious that they've decided to come in and support this event, and indeed will be joining us on the panel. So as I said, I'm Kevin May, I'm the editor and co-founder. Usually my glamorous assistant on these calls is Gene Quinn, who's our CEO, but he's otherwise engaged this week on the road, working out of another event also in New Orleans, where you will see in a second is where one of our panelists is also based. So our panel is as follows. So from right to left is Nick Vivion. He works with me. He's a reporter here at Tnooz. Alex Kremer, who is not the CEO, apologies for that, he's the CTO at FlexTrip. He's in Denver today. Dave Thomson, he's the CEO of Bynd Labs. He's in New York City. He's also attending the TechCrunch Disrupt conference in the city today, so we're very grateful that David has joined us reasonably early in his morning, but incredibly early for Bill Lawler, who's the Vice President for Mobile Product Management at Tealeaf. He's in San Jose, and it's, like I said, it's incredibly early for him. So hopefully Bill has already wiped away some of the cobwebs from the night before, and we're very grateful that they've all joined us. So the format of this show, for many of you that have listened in before, is as follows. So the first 25 minutes or so is essentially like a Sunday morning political panel show. We just debate some of the things that have been going on in recent weeks. And then the second half of the show is where we kind of focus on one particular subject. So for this particular episode, we're looking at mobile. In particular, we're looking at user experience and also things around, actually, now that we've been talking about mobile for so long, let's just say it's probably time to start looking at conversions and how to, how to actually monetize some of this, some of this drive towards mobile bookings. Is there, how do we say this? Are we at some kind of tipping point where things are actually starting to work with mobile, or are we still kind of like scratching around the edges a little bit? So in particular, as I said earlier, we've got the guys here from Bynd and Tealeaf who are indeed experts when it comes to mobile. Tealeaf in particular from a general e-commerce perspective, but Bynd in particular around some of the things that it's doing in the travel space. Bynd has been working with us at Tnooz on some of our T-hacks, and some of the developers that have been involved in those T-hacks have been really quite enthused by some of the things that Bynd is doing in the mobile space. So that's the format for the show. First of all, as I said, we're going to look at some of the hot topics of things that have been going on recently. Indeed, there have been some quite interesting moves in the M&A space. In particular, some acquisitions. So I suppose, guys, first of all, I guess, welcome, Nick, Alex, Dave, and Bill. Welcome to the show. Alex, let's go to you first. I mean, there's been some interesting ones, in particular ones in your space. There's the acquisition of Gidzy by Get Your Guide, the German companies. What did you think of that, first of all? And then we'll go to some of the other guys to talk about some of the acquisition news. I mean, this is the most recent one. This one only happened last week. Alex, what did you make of all that one?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a great acquisition for Get Your Guide. I think Gidzy had a wonderful product kind of centric team. They had the Gidzy platform, I think, was a great product, but it unfortunately was in the same space as some of the other P2P kind of centric tours and activities players that, as we've repeatedly talked about on Tnooz and in other places, is a model that I think is still either emerging or starting to flatline. Especially considering some of the economics involved. Gidzy, I think, was operating on a model where the margins were very tight, and it was something that would require a lot more investment to basically work. So I think it was actually a good acquisition for Get Your Guide.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose that much of the discussion last week was very much around whether it was an acquisition hire, because they did, seemingly close the Gidsy site down almost the second that the deal was announced. So presumably it was some kind of acquisition hire, you think?
I believe so. I mean, you could see, the product was shut down the same day that they announced the acquisition, right? So basically, I think that kind of showed the acquirer had very little appetite for continuing to pursue that model. And let's not forget, Get Your Guide started as a P2P kind of model, and then kind of shifted away to being more, the professional tour guides and selling, professionally organized tours.
Yeah, sure. And just a reminder, everybody, and apologies for not mentioning this earlier, we are more than happy to take questions in from you, the audience. You can do so by pressing the question button, which is on the right-hand side of your dashboard. That question will come through to me. Submit a question at any time, and we'll get to it. And I hope some of you have got some things to say. I've always got far too many questions to ask these guys. Nick in New Orleans, I gather it'll be humid there in a couple of months, as we were talking about earlier before we went on the call, but do you sense that there is some kind of hotness around M&A activity in the travel space at the moment, or is it something else?
Yeah, I think that a lot of people have a lot of money right now. They've been sitting on cash, and people have been able to raise more money too, since things are generally looking up. So I think that it's more appealing. And then there's also the whole narrative of perhaps that the bull market is coming to another head, where all of a sudden the only way that people can get growth is to purchase. So I'm not sure what that really means in the grand scheme of things, but I think there have been some intelligent purchases, and also maybe inevitable ones like TripAdvisor, with them buying Jetsetter. I don't know how I felt about that, really. It kind of was a very interesting, I think, move on their part, but it also kind of pointed to the fact that Jetsetter was really needing to sell. So it's kind of hard to tell without knowing the financials, which one of these companies really just needed to sell themselves, or else they were going to go out of business. Yeah, and that's something that I always like to guess about.
Yeah, sure. And David in New York today, TripAdvisor and Jetsetter, I mean, Nick says it was almost inevitable. I mean, do you sense that as well?
I have a different take on this. I was pretty curious about the acquisition by TripAdvisor. From my understanding of the deal when they were spun off is that they were going to be more media focused. And now it appears that they're really just directly competing against the Expedia and Groupon partnership. I think it's a great pickup by TripAdvisor. I think the Jetsetter is probably one of the better photo-based user experiences that's kind of transcended now across all of the different types of mobile devices and applications. And I think that what they've done with their own platform is they've done a really great job of bridging kind of web, mobile, and tablet, and potentially TripAdvisor can take some of that thought leadership in the space and roll it up into their platforms. But I would say I still would like to maybe even get your take on this, Kevin, on what you think about this essentially spin-off of a media company that's now directly competing against the originating company.
Why don't you give us the background on that one first of all, and what you think?
Well, my thoughts are that I feel like that the TripAdvisor really was going after that media space, just with some of their other acquisitions and their social tools, and now they're essentially an e-commerce company again.
Yeah, I mean,
go ahead.
No, please, Dave, go ahead.
It just doesn't line up, and maybe I'm just not tuned in well enough into what TripAdvisor's intending to do, but it was kind of out in left field to me with the acquisition.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because Expedia spun off. As we all know, Expedia spun off TripAdvisor. It's probably about 15, 16 months ago, and is Expedia is getting back into the media game by working with people, investing in companies like Trivago, whereas TripAdvisor, which was essentially just a media company, as you say, is getting into the e-commerce transaction space. I think possibly the more interesting part of what TripAdvisor is doing is it's kind of bolstering its media efforts by getting into the hotel meta search space a little bit more. As we all know, a couple of months back, TripAdvisor said that it was going to turn its attention to developing a fully fledged meta search engine for hotels, which in some respects was quite surprising because you just figured, well, why hadn't it done this before? But you can see what's going on in the wider OTA meta search ecosystem, and you can think, well, perhaps this was a logical thing for them to do at this point. Now, whether it's how much it's diversifying by buying up companies like Jetsetter, and it's had the Sneakaway brand for a little while as well. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting company. Investors seemingly seem to like it. I mean, just to bring Bill in on this finally before we move to the next topic. I mean, in the wider space, I know you've got a bit of acquisition chat that you want to have at the end of the discussion, but just generally, companies that are based on one kind of model, as in TripAdvisor with media getting into e-commerce, is that something that's kind of happens in the wider e-commerce world? I mean, do you think?
Well, I certainly think we're seeing that in some of the more sophisticated verticals and more sophisticated enterprises. I think there's a great kind of land grab, I think, that's been underway for probably a year now, where companies are trying to do that, and I think it's only going to increase in the next, I don't know, say through the end of this year. I think somebody earlier made a comment about just where the market is and having to buy growth, and so I think not only is it a land grab, but it's buying growth as well, and that's kind of, I think, indicative of what's going on across industries.
Mm. Yeah, okay.
And Kevin, just to bookend that quickly, I think also let's not overlook the team aspect. Buying teams is still a very viable, strategy in both the Valley and beyond. And I think, whether TripAdvisor really thought that Jetsetter was worth it as an asset itself, or maybe they wanted the engineering talent, or we don't know that.
Yeah, of course, the other one that TripAdvisor bought, I think it's probably about 6 months ago now, was Wonderfly. I think that was just in the autumn of last year. Wonderfly was this, in inverted commas, hot travel startup. TripAdvisor bought it, and there's been almost zero activity on that brand ever since. So that was, one can presume was an acquisition, a talent hire in that case. So maybe TripAdvisor way of growing is to just buy up or hoover up talent as and when it can. To your point, sorry, Bill, go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say, also along that line, I think one thing we're definitely seeing bringing up Wonderfly is companies are acquiring other organizations that have mobile talent, that have social talent. Even if they don't know what they're doing with them yet, they're trying to stock their arsenal so that if they begin to make moves there, that they have the right people to take it forward.
Mm. Yeah, we've just had a question.
Cool
Sorry, go.
too. I would not overlook the cool factor of these kind of things too. A company like TripAdvisor for a certain cohort is not appealing, at all as a brand. So I think that by going out and taking up some of the brands that have a little more cachet, it's risky because on one hand, do I want to use Jetsetter now that TripAdvisor owns it? If I'm that kind of, person, if I'm in that demographic. But, by getting in there, they can actually maybe start to play in different spaces and appeal to different demographics, and maybe don't even know that Jetsetter got bought by TripAdvisor because they just don't pay attention to that kind of stuff. So I think there's also the brand, value there that appeals to a certain type of person, because I know that, when I look at TripAdvisor, for my restaurant or any other clients or things like that, the average age is much older, the people who are using the service and reviewing on the service. So I think that you can go both ways. If you buy a brand that's really strong, you might be able to build another business, or you can actually cannibalize the brand, and then you just have to let it loose or just close it.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, a point raised here, and this maybe, Dave, you could pick up on this. Greg Abbott at DataArt. Hi, Greg. Thanks for chiming in here. I mean, he notes that Henry Hartbelt at Hudson Crossing has made the point before that OTAs actually make money through online advertising more than they do through actual transactions. I don't know whether that's a universal trend or not. I mean, perhaps then, Dave, that's the reason why they're getting into media from an OTA perspective.
Yeah, I think that, and Greg, thanks for the statement there. I think that you're going to see more and more of this. There's the model behind, if you just break down the way that Kayak operates, they're not a they're heading toward an OTA method, but they make a good amount of their money just on click transactions with dynamic price or dynamic checkboxes on the homepage. You're going to see that model kind of being spun across all the different OTAs because it drives cash. I mean, it's something like 25 to 35 cents per click on those. You're not going to get that, based on a single transaction. Sometimes with 20 websites people visit, you're going to have to make money by some of those outclicks as well. And I think that you're going to see that more and more. So I think that we're going to see this blend between e-commerce and media going, I guess, both from inside of the media sites into the e-commerce side, and as well as on the e-commerce side going over into the media side. I think it's just inevitably going to happen.
Yeah, and as Greg has just pointed out here, all of these acquisitions at TripAdvisor generally always kind of fit in under the Smarter Travel Media brand, which is, I guess, is the division of TripAdvisor. And he says, is this now TripAdvisor's, in inverted commas, innovation incubator, that part of the part of the company? So, right, moving on. Interesting study came out, I think it was last week or the week before, from HRS, which is a very large European hotel consolidator, consumer-facing and B2B as well. And it's looked at every single one of the 125,000 European hotels on its database and found that 2/3 of those now are actually offering free hotel Wi-Fi. Now, for some, this has been the holy grail of any kind of visit to a hotel for many years. You get people campaigning for it. We actually think at Tnooz that the discussion has kind of moved on a little bit from should we just have free hotel Wi-Fi or not. I mean, Bill, I'm making the wild assumption here that you're a well-traveled gentleman. I mean, when you go to a hotel, do you expect to have free Wi-Fi, or do you want to see it in some other way? I mean, one of the discussions that does come up now is that it has to actually be good hotel Wi-Fi, not just free.
Right, exactly. I think that, I probably am a little more careful about the hotels I select because nothing drives me crazier than having to pay for Wi-Fi at this point. But certainly it's the quality of the Wi-Fi now. It's the number of devices you can connect to Wi-Fi. I see pretty common, there's a limit of like 2 or 3 devices, and pretty frequently they'll let you connect with your laptop or with your tablet, but they'll block the smartphone from actually using the Wi-Fi. So I think certainly we're getting to a more liberal world, and now it comes down to serving the consumer in a more nuanced way. I'll also say just one thing that I've observed, and this is actually in the retail industry, but I was in the UK a couple weeks ago participating in a conference and sat down with a couple of the big UK retail chains, and one thing they've noticed is that they've had to start rolling out Wi-Fi in their stores. They can literally see when a consumer comes in the store, them picking up their smartphone, and if they can't find Wi-Fi, walking out of the store. So I think the expectation is broadly, it better be there in the hotel, but now it's how good is it, how many devices can I connect, and how difficult is it to do that.
Now, let's go to you for a second then, Dave. You're in New York City today for the TechCrunch Disrupt conference. I mean, would you have picked the accommodation based on whether you could get free Wi-Fi or based on whether the Wi-Fi that was available was whizzy for you to carry on doing work when you needed to?
Interestingly enough, I picked the hotel that I'm staying at because it had a strong Wi-Fi connection, so I could be on this call. But it was not free. I actually had to trade it for points. So I think the more interesting part about free Wi-Fi is that it's happening at a lower level. So 1, 2, 3 stars are where they're being offered for free. When you start getting into the 4 and 5 star, you're starting to pay for it more and more. I think there's actually some opportunities, though, here regarding just free Wi-Fi in general. I think if you just look at what Wi-Fi does, I think that every single tourist destination or location in general should have it. And the reason why is that it's nearly low-cost marketing, and it's because when people come in to your store or your hotel or they're at a restaurant that's kind of in a remote location, they're sharing their photos, they're checking in, they're adding reviews or tips across social media. And you're looking at, when you look at that and you look at where the data is, it's on Foursquare, it's on Facebook's Open Graph, it's on Google+, and all 3 of those are essentially presenting things down based upon affinities. So if you are in a location and you fire up one of your location-based service apps, and the business that has the most volume based upon your affinity is there, you're going to go there. And I think it gives you a really large opportunity for just being exposed across those networks.
Yeah, and Alex, I mean, how much would you be willing to pay per night for super fast hotel Wi-Fi if you had to pay for it? How much would you be willing to pay in dollars?
So in general, I think at this point, I would expect that to be free. So I was just going to pick up on the point that David mentioned about the higher end hotels still charging and the lower end ones being free, which is kind of very inverted from what a customer should expect. But what I'm liking is several brands now, Starwood, Marriott, Hilton, what they're doing for their frequent traveler customers, their frequent guest customers, is basically guaranteeing a certain experience brand wide. So, for example, as a Starwood Platinum and I think Gold as well, across the world, I'm now entitled to free Wi-Fi no matter what Starwood property I'm staying at, and I'm also guaranteed a certain number of devices to pick up on bills points, et cetera, et cetera. So I think some of the brand hotels really still have an opportunity to really have a draw for their brand by saying, hey, you stay with us often, here's free Wi-Fi. We're going to guarantee this certain experience. So I always know no matter what hotel I'm staying at, no matter across the globe, I know I can connect 5 devices and it's going to be free. And I think that's a pretty smart tactic. The change are starting to follow.
Yeah, I do agree with you, and I'm quite glad that it isn't. The debate has kind of moved on from I'd want to have free Wi-Fi. I think people are understanding that it isn't as black and white an issue as perhaps it once was. Right. So we'll just move on. Nick, you wrote what ended up being our most popular story on Tnooz last week. I must say and confess, much to my surprise, not through the quality of your writing, but this was a story that that you wrote, Nick. And just explain to us very briefly what's going on here and the background, because essentially WordPress is, as many of us know, is a blogging or a publishing platform. Indeed, at Tnooz we use WordPress as our core content management system. What on earth is WordPress getting into here?
Well, something that people always forget that WordPress is actually a for-profit company behind it. So they actually do have products that they sell that they try to make money on, and they make, I'm sure, a lot of money on it. And one of the ones that they're kind of considering is the fact that a lot of restaurants, wedding providers, photographers, videographers, hotel owners, B&B owners, that they are using WordPress already. And what is actually happening is rather than going and downloading a theme from WordPress itself, they're going to a third party, something like a restaurant engine or Hermes themes that are targeted to particular verticals. And so what they had this realization that, hey, if we just open up and do our own themes and actually just skin it, basically, because these themes are stuff that they had, I believe they had assets that they had basically lying around, and put a skin up on it and actually promote it as for hotels, for restaurants, to the wedding photographers, the event planners, and actually sell it to them. And then basically they go through it, they get their basic theme. If they want to get customization, they pay extra. It's very clever because you pay extra for customization. If you want to do a new CSS skin on it, you pay for more storage, you pay for hosting, you pay for your domain name. So I mean, they're racking up, if you got all those add-ons, about $3.99 a year or so, given all the different things that people might need. So it's pretty impressive, and people, I think, were really excited to see it. Of course, I think a lot of people who are already selling those products were a little bit maybe concerned.
Yeah, I mean, just on that, I mean, Dean Bloom, thanks for your question. Dean has just chimed in here. He says, does anyone have any insight? I guess, Nick, seeing as you wrote the story, you might do. Have any insight into the possible back office integration on hotel sites? I mean, WordPress hotel sites. How is it actually going to work in terms of product and fulfillment and things like that?
Yeah, so I think that's kind of the big advantages that WordPress comes into, I think, with the hotels especially. I think, restaurants obviously also have reservations, so that integration is important. But from what I understand, it has a fully integrated reservations plugin, but I'm not 100% on this, but I believe that they're not doing any sort of extensive integrations up front. So, for example, for the restaurant, I don't believe that you could get OpenTable to interface with your reservations plugin to make sure that you don't overlap reservations.
Right.
But I also know that the product, is 1 month old for the hotels, 3 months old for the restaurants. So I'm sure they have to be thinking about it, but then it is also a very valid point that maybe it's better to go with a company that is focused on your niche, so that therefore, they listen to you when you need these things, especially with hotels. But I think they're really focusing on B&Bs with very limited number of inventory or number of rooms. I don't think they're looking to get hotels with 300 rooms on there, because that's maybe just a little too complicated for the product.
And let's not forget that a lot of these small properties are probably not using any PMS or anything like that at all. And I think this is targeted at these tiny ones. Right, exactly. There's tiny ones that basically are maybe managing their inventory even in Excel, something like that. I think this is a great first step. And savvy startups out there, I think there's an opportunity here to bridge that gap, the gap that WordPress left.
Yeah, Matthew Hoffman. Matthew, thanks ever so much for your comments here. He says, WordPress has or is developing its own plugin for this. So, just generally, Bill or Dave, maybe this isn't massive disruption, but it's another sign that an organization that sits on the periphery of one industry, like travel, can just suddenly wade in and offer another type of service, and then just kind of put a little wrinkle in everyone else's kind of thoughts in all this, the existing players in the industry.
Yeah, I personally think this is pretty huge. This gives access to small hotels, essentially websites that are better than most 4- to 5-star hotel websites. I perused a bunch of the different themes that were out there, and they're really arguably better than most corporate websites that are out there. I think that there's some other things that this gains access to as well. There's 65 million websites that run WordPress. That's a significant amount of the actual overall amount of sites on the internet. And then on top of that, it gives kind of hotels the access to thousands of these developers that operate on top of WordPress and who are experienced with both PHP or WordPress. And it gives them the ability to access, as Nick was saying, CSS or customizing the PHP out to do different templates so it's more tailored around the hotel's brand. And you combine that with, I think it's something like 25,000 plugins associated with WordPress. You can do some incredible things with the technology without actually having to do a whole lot of work. I think what you're going to see is there are a bunch of different really design-based platforms that are out there for hotel websites and their inventory management. This is going to put a dent into their business, and I can see it really gaining traction in the probably 50 or less hotel room properties. But again, there's some opportunity there for startups to come in and do a plugin into some of the booking engines, so that they can get broader distribution and channel management. So I just put that out there.
Okay.
And I'm also hoping to see that hotels will also, have more opportunities to customize and actually go for it. I guess the freelancers, they're using will basically, if you want to customize it, your price should be lower, because freelancers coming in here get so much stuff right out of the box that it should be much cheaper to get a very functional website than it would previously. So I think that helps at least eliminate, for the savvy hotelier, can eliminate a little bit of the freelancer's upper hand when it's like, well, this website's going to cost you $8,000, even though it's still built on WordPress, which is a pretty valid thing for them.
Okay, right. We're just going to move on to the final one, which is other things that may have caught your eye in the last couple of weeks. Bill, we were talking before we went on air. There was an interesting move with regards to Facebook last week that you thought was worthy of a mention.
Yeah, so a couple things. I think that one of the more interesting acquisitions, last week, Facebook bought a company called Parse. Basically a startup that provides back-end tools for mobile developers. So they kind of have a cloud environment that handles storage, notification. I think they have some social aspects to their capabilities as well. Kind of, like WordPress is now. With WordPress, you're getting access to all these developers. Everybody's really trying to make plays where they can leverage an investment to take advantage of the massive developer universe. And Parse is very specific to mobile, which is near and dear to my heart. And certainly, we're seeing companies like Parse getting snapped up left and right. It makes it very easy as you're developing your app to get access to storage, to identity management. It really accelerates the development universe or the development space for mobile app developers. And so I think this is something, just in general, we need to track, we need to watch. The investments now going into mobile in general are pretty stunning. I saw, I think it was an eMarketer stat earlier this week that there's going to be 70 million iPad users in the U.S., just in the U.S. in 2013. So I mean, the need for smart, well-designed, well-implemented mobile apps, mobile websites, and it's just gonna continue to skyrocket.
Yeah, great. And we're going to get on to our discussion about mobile after this segment of the show. Nick, anything else that caught your eye the last couple of weeks?
Yeah, I've been really happy to see interesting partnerships pop up, that people are thinking in smart ways with existing content, like the GoGoBot and HomeAway partnership. It's just nice to see people actually thinking and not just blindly doing things just because they feel like it or maybe, without thought. I also thought that kind of applied to Superfly, thinking about the emails that they already have access to and how they might be able to use that data to provide more targeted offers, more beneficial to the consumer. So those kind of things, using a product or a resource that you already have and then leveraging it into something way bigger and way more useful both to the company and the consumer is pretty exciting to me.
The GoGoBot HomeAway thing was interesting. I mean, I was having a discussion with them last week, and asking about did the demographics match? Because I would have thought what HomeAway is doing with GoGoBot is actually perhaps more what Airbnb users would have been doing. But obviously, this is a partnership, but like you say, it is an interesting one all the same.
Yeah, and I think it's also, I think the demographics question is interesting, but it's smart because it kind of silos them. They're connected, but they're not merged, So anytime a HomeAway owner creates a piece of content, it actually gets seeded to GoGoBot's database, and it doesn't say from HomeAway necessarily, so it's not like there's much, I guess, bleeding of the brands. But what it does do is give GoGoBot more content and actually might provide them a viable business in some way, because it allows them to take this content that they're doing and create these guides maybe for a hotel concierge or something else. I mean, obviously it'd be in direct competition to HomeAway, but, could still be something that is valuable and they can actually start selling some of this content that they've been accumulating over the past few years.
Yeah, and Alex, news items there, you're in the Mile High City, I think it's called, looking down on the rest of the industry. What else has caught your eye?
It's funny you mentioned that. One of the things that caught my eye is a local company here making a move into the travel space, and that company's MapQuest. They announced a partnership with Priceline, I believe, last week, 2 weeks ago.
That's correct.
To bring their hotel and other content into the MapQuest platform. I was surprised by this as anyone else, but MapQuest is still one of the most popular sites on the internet. They have about twice the traffic, for example, as Priceline. And so I think it's a move to watch, to see where they'll take that. But the amount of traffic they have is still pretty high, and I think they could be an interesting move.
Yeah, I mean, I always find the MapQuest thing quite interesting. I remember meeting them at the Focusrite conference in Scottsdale last year, and Google Maps gets so much attention, I guess, because it is Google, and MapQuest has been around for so long. But as you say, MapQuest has got it's got so much traffic, and it's still one of the highest travel-related search terms in the US every single month, as we see on the Hitwise data. It's like you say, it's one to watch. Dave, finally, what else? Is there anything else that kind of caught your eye?
Yeah, I think the Parse deal to me is probably the big one. It was an $88 million deal without any incentives for keeping the employees. So it just kind of validates out there what the back end as a service model is. People like Hipmunk and Carnival and Travel Channel were all on Parse. And I think what we're going to see is this dramatic shift in doing development and without a back end essentially, where you're just writing front ends. And Facebook's trying to lead that charge now. Apparently there were 4 other companies in the deal for that too. I believe it was Dropbox, Yahoo, Google, and there's another one. So that market's going to be heating up, and I think well, I guess what we're going to see is maybe a lot of those people bailing out of that parse platform as well, because nobody wants to have their data in Facebook. But we'll see where that goes.
So it was a good old-fashioned bidding war for the company then, was it?
Indeed.
Great. Okay, that's what we like. It certainly keeps us interested when you've got companies squabbling over other companies. Right, so thanks ever so much, guys, for your look back at the last couple of weeks. Now, as I said at the beginning of the show, and just to remind you all, you can submit your questions for us, but please now specifically, and apologies for ones that we didn't get to in that last section, specifically ones around mobile and mobile travel. So obviously, given that we've got our representative from Bynd and our representative from Tealeaf here, some experts, obviously, that can give us the next 20 minutes or so a discussion around kind of where we are with with mobile and travel. I've lost count how many times I've been at conferences over the last 5 or 6 years, and someone has stood up and said, this is the year of mobile and travel. Thankfully, we don't hear that very often. We are at the point where travel is very much aligned with mobile. But let's go to you first, Bill. I mean, where do you think we are as a state of the nation report, for want of a better phrase, of mobile and travel? Where are we? Has everyone got it? Is everyone just grappling with what to do with it? What do you think?
Well, I think even within travel, you have to look at the different sectors to truly understand that. I think that broadly speaking, the airlines absolutely get mobile and travel. I think, much like banks, the airlines were early adopters of mobile technologies to begin with, back in the days where they just used SMS to send you info about flight delays and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So they've always had their eye on this. I think that, again, what we've seen, broadly speaking, is maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago, they really amped up their investment in mobile web technologies and the mobile web experience, and then rapidly followed that with the native app experience. And so I think the airlines are very much on top of it. I think they're at the point now where they're doing bells and whistles to their mobile offerings versus any kind of core thing. I think, if you look across the rest of the industry, I think the hotels are a little bit behind that. But again, if you take a look at some of the more interesting apps out there, like I'm always super impressed by the Hilton iPad app, which is just incredibly direct in getting you to what you want. But again, I think that in general, travel, and much like banking, is still ahead of the rest of the world. I think by the very nature of mobile and travel, and you're obviously can be mobile when you're traveling, and it's really well suited to serve those needs. I think what we do see, though, is conversion rates on mobile devices don't yet approach the PC universe, and so I think there's still work to do in the user experience, and kind of a happy path to get a user to where they want to be that needs to happen.
Okay, we'll get to that specific point shortly. I mean, Dave, do you agree there that hotels are slightly ahead of the curve? Sorry, airlines are slightly ahead of the curve of everybody else. I mean, I will direct, for fear of sending lots of traffic to Tnooz. I mean, your colleague Jay Ganadon wrote a really good piece on Tnooz last week about the bounty to be had, was the headline of when data roaming charges come down. Is that one of the elements that's kind of pushing adoption? Well, we know adoption rates are high, but pushing kind of engagement and just more activity in mobile and travel, do you think?
Yeah, I know. I'd say that there's a couple differences here. So in the U.S. market, I think there's the ability to roam already, which was a big issue in the 90s. But now it's there, so I think just being able to use location-based services here is kind of ubiquitous. And you move into Europe, it's harder. In fact, as an American, it's still going to be hard for me to do that, to roam between countries. But I think for Europeans, it's going to be a lot easier, and you're going to see more of the location-based services pop up and be more prevalently used. Now, to go into about how travel, where we are in travel and the state of travel, I think travel, there's only a handful of companies, in my opinion, that are doing a good job in mobile. I'm not going to point them out, but I think that there's, I'd say, maybe 10. And the rest is really lagging. I think you look at the good applications that are on the markets, they're not travel apps. They're other applications that do micro tasks. And what I've seen in the travel market, there's the wanting to add all of what is on the website into the app, which I think is just drives really bad user experiences. You just should be, if it's a booking app, make it a booking app and let the user get in and get out. If you want to make it about itineraries, make it about itineraries. Make that separate. I think you have to look at what the overall funnel is and try to get the user at that point in time, rather than kind of just diluting out everything into the web or the mobile experience.
Kevin, I think that's a really good point that David's making. I think that this is the first time, I think, in a long time that travel companies are basically being forced by virtue of screen size to rethink the user experience. I think over the past 10 years, the most travel booking websites have looked essentially the same and have had the same experience. You have that same search box on every website. And I think for the first time now, the companies that are going to do well in mobile are going to be the ones that really think about, how people book travel today and what their actual, what the user experience should be.
Yeah, one thing I would add around that is, and I think, for everybody here on the call, just look at your own behavior when you're using your smartphone. When you're on your smartphone, you're task-oriented. There's something you're trying to achieve, a very specific something. And you just want to be able to do that as fast as you can, as easily as you can. And so I think that kind of simplicity is forcing a lot of companies, the requirement of that simplicity is forcing a lot of companies to think about how they design that user experience.
And just to that point, Bill, I mean, it was kind of cut and dried in that sense because, people had a certain type of behavior on a desktop, and as you quite rightly say, they're very task-orientated when they're on their mobiles. But then you go and throw tablets and iPads into the mix, and you suddenly get this arguably perhaps irritating hybrid of the two, which kind of stretches the behavior of consumers once again, possibly.
Yeah, I think certainly we see a pretty identifiable pattern, which changes over the course of a day. If you're looking at any given mobile consumer, they're starting off in the morning, afternoon with the smartphone. They're trying to achieve specific things. There's a certain user experience they expect. When they get back to their home, 5 p.m., 6 p.m., you can literally see everybody pick up their tablets and start browsing. And so, I think there's different experiences that need to be accommodated. What the consumer is willing to do on the tablet is different than what they're willing to do on the smartphone, and how much room you have to give them other things that might be interesting but aren't the core path that they're looking for.
And just to bring Nick in here on this particular part, I mean, how do you let's make it very simple. How do you use your devices? Just as a young consumer, dare I say it? I mean, you've probably got you've got a mobile, and you've probably got a tablet and a desktop. Do you find that your behaviour changes between the three?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think task orientation is definitely something that smartphone is made for because of the screen size. But I do find myself using Twitter and things like that on my smartphone because I have it on me, rather than trying to go find where I left the tablet or go upstairs to the computer. Sometimes I'll do some more of the longer form tasks on the smartphone. And so I think for me the most frustrating part is always just across devices. I want to be able to pick things up, and I think that's kind of always been for me the holy grail. If I can be, in the middle of doing one thing on my smartphone, but then I end up upstairs and I remember it, just having that access right there.
Yeah, I think we've got a bit of a.
So I think that's when you. Yeah, it's a tough one. I mean, if that ever happens, I think I'll be very impressed.
Yeah. So Nick, that actually already exists, and I use it every day. So Chrome has that feature now, basically all my tabs are synced across all my devices. And just to pick up your point, that's exactly what I do. I just, for me, the device really doesn't matter anymore. My laptop now, which is quote unquote a laptop, which I travel with, sits on my desk at home. But anywhere I am in my house, I might pick up my smartphone, I might pick up my tablet, depending on where it's laying, and just pick up the same tasks over and over, no matter which device I started them on. So I think that's that experience will become, especially as you get into things like wearable computing down the line with Google Glass and whatnot. I think it's going to be very interesting to see how apps and services can really enhance that experience, where you doesn't matter which device you're on, you're still trying to accomplish the same task. Yeah,
I mean, just on this, I mean, I put my hands up. I bought my first tablet device and iPad just 2 months ago. I'm a late adopter, for want of a better phrase, and I've found in my own kind of browsing behavior that I use my iPad mostly with apps. I very rarely use my browser with the iPad, and I that's just something that's happened. I've just noticed, organically. I very rarely use the Safari browser. I'm always using the apps on it, but that's not a question. It's just a comment. I mean, to go to our two mobile experts here. I mean, you started talking a little bit there, Bill, about this driving bookings and conversion and things like that. I mean, what are some of the techniques that you're seeing, or you hope to see being implemented that maybe start increasing those conversion rates?
Well, I think that there are a number of design factors that need to be accounted for, and back to what some of the things Dave was saying earlier. Simplicity of the design and specificity, especially in the smartphone universe. I mean, at the end of the day, the user just wants to search for something, find it, and either decide to transact or walk away. And so a simple path to allow them to do that is really what's required. And it's very hard to do it. I think, and in many cases, that's because we do start with kind of the web world with our existing assets and then kind of go through a subtractive process versus designing for the mobile device specifically. So I think certainly there's that factor. I think we need to remember that the primary interface for the mobile phone is now the finger, right? And so you need to account for the size and width of the finger, of the human finger. You need to think about where the thumb rests. I mean, they're basic things, but it's amazing how many people don't follow them. And I could go on and on about, too many images, long forms, visual overload, all of those things detract from the experience and what the user is ultimately trying to do. And then I would say on the back end, that payment's always the hard part, I think, making sure that the payment system is integrated such that, whatever they've entered on the web with your existing website can be leveraged by the mobile device. You're not forcing people to type credit card numbers or, really go through long forms or anything like that.
Dave, in New York, I mean, when you have prospective clients come to you at Bynd and Momentum Design Lab, and they say, "Oh, we want to have a mobile service that does this." I mean, do you think are you finding that they really understand these kind of nuances that the panel is discussing now, or are they still kind of slightly wide-eyed as to what they think the opportunity is and not so aware of what the actual reality is?
Yeah, I'd say that there's an opportunity for education in every instance of product design. I think a lot of times people they have their list of things that they're trying to accomplish, and it's either driven by their product team or management or whatnot, and you have to kind of talk them off the cliff. Because there's way too many things that you could do wrong on a mobile device. And going back to the last comment was that you have to make it essentially the easiest thing to use with the lowest amount of barriers. So forms, for instance, the forms don't even have them. If there's credit cards that are stored already, just let the user put in their CVV or their number that is the security code so they can get past it. And then make it so that it's as easy as you can do. I mean, you have to pull back these requirements around putting about us's and any of these things that could disrupt the user flow into the purchase process. And really just focus on browsing and tapping to buy.
And you think, I mean, you are the expert in here. This is what your organisation does. I mean, to kind of back to the question a little bit. I mean, when you're speaking to people, do you still sense that that they don't quite get that they have to simplify things when it comes to maybe design on a mobile, or do they? I was struck by what you said. Somebody said earlier about you often think that people want they want to be all things to everybody. They don't realise that they need to just perhaps do one function and do it simply and do it very well.
That is the case pretty much for most people that have had a long-running web business. You have to talk them back and help them reduce the scope. I'd say it's pretty prevalent across anyone. I think you get it differently with people who are maybe in the valley and are doing something that are more interesting around like a mobile-first experience. They understand it leans better, and it's the existing folks that have, they know how they make their money, and they know what is on their websites, and they are rather stubborn in the way that they want to do things. It's always an education process.
Yeah, people stubborn in Silicon Valley. Whoever thought it? But
Yeah.
I mean, Alex, you're in the tour and activity space with FlexTrip there. I mean, one of the kind of topics that comes up when we get into a discussion around mobile is it is the in-destination services that perhaps are going to be something that are going to give us the bounty in travel. I mean, is that something that you agree with? And do you see that changing anytime soon, or are we still just always going to go on about roaming charges until that does change?
So on the roaming point, I actually, I don't know if maybe I'm the only one here doing this, but I have a little case full of SIM cards. So no matter what country I travel to, I just buy a local SIM and I just go, and I don't even worry about data roaming anymore because I can just pop in a local SIM and go. So I don't know if I'm the minority with that, but it seems like that's a pretty prevalent thing amongst my friends, at least. We don't worry about data roaming anymore. So to that, I think regarding the tourism activities point, I think there's still in our sector some massive challenges on the back end before someone can really kill it on the front end with the mobile app. Things like geolocation and getting proper data and instant booking, all these kinds of stuff. Some of the stuff I've written about on Tnooz last year is still being fixed. And I think over time, what you'll see is as that situation gets better, you're going to see a lot more mobile apps with better data that can really enable something like for example, like a hotel tonight like experience where you can literally open the app, find something near you, go book it, and do it within a matter of an hour. And unfortunately, no one has done that yet. I think the closest right now in terms of mobile and tourism activities is actually TripAdvisor and their city guides app.
Yeah. I think, if anything, your comment about the SIM cards is you've really just demonstrated that you're probably the most well-travelled out of all of us on the panel today. So just to wrap things up as we get towards the end, I mean, Nick, I'm going to come to you first. Do you think and do you worry that we'll still be having this same kind of discussion around mobile and conversions and bookings and things in 2 years' time, or do you think the industry as a whole will have sufficiently evolved and got its head around what it needs to do from a design and user experience perspective, and will have kind of evolved a little bit?
I don't know. I was hoping that we would stop talking about this like 3 years ago, but it just keeps, we keep still having to talk about it. It's such a de facto part of life that that's just the way it is, So it's just, understanding mobile as not just this new thing, but basically just a channel like any other that needs to be optimized. And I think the conversion issue should always be talked about, and sometimes maybe for some businesses and some people don't actually talk enough about it, and figuring out actually what the consumer's trying to do, where they drop off, all these things that go into whether or not someone converts or follows through. I think it's just really important to always focus on that, but not focus on just the raw number, but focus actually on the person, and I love seeing design forward thinking and all that kind of stuff, but by focusing on the actual person and how they're using a particular service or device, that's the way to go, because by doing that you get a lot more liberty and you actually do something that people want to use, which makes it popular.
Right. Okay. Alex, to you, I mean, are you with Nick in that that we could be having the same discussions or not, or will we have motored on a little bit?
I think as much, I'm going to be optimistic and say no. I think in 2 years, I hope on a large scale, there's going to be a massive improvement in this area. Yeah,
and Dave, you really are at the sharp end of all of this. I presume Bynd will have, like I say, at the cutting edge of mobile web development and application development and things like that. I mean, what do you sense is actually coming around the corner, rather than the specific question that I asked Nick and Alex? What's actually coming around the corner over the next 2 years?
I think you're going to see more and more of these backends as services come up, and this is going to be around a lot of things. I mean, the one thing that travel has done right in the past is that they've essentially been creating these systems for a long time. I mean, backends and services is basically what runs almost all of travel. I think the one fatal flaw in that right now is that travel is written in XML. All the APIs are, and you're seeing little by little these APIs turn into REST APIs where they're spitting out JSON, which is more consumable by a mobile app. I think once travel actually turns that corner and can start providing these services out in a more consumable manner for all of the different mobile platforms, we're going to see a lot more disruption inside of travel in mobile. Until that happens, though, I don't know if it's going to be something that we can look forward to, because it is a bit away. I mean, Amadeus is making some strides in there, and the Travelport has been doing some experimental APIs as well that are REST-based, but the reality is that's where travel is. It's all around XML, and until that changes, it's not gonna there's not gonna be anything massive that we're gonna see.
Yeah, and Bill, you have the joy of having the final word on this particular topic.
So I would say that mobility is not static, right? And so if you look at the broad adoption of technology, how long it took for PCs to become ubiquitous versus laptops versus smartphones versus now tablets, there's this massive time compression underway. And so there's a moving bar. So in 2 years, people might be talking to your app, or haptic technology might be involved. There's all these different analog kind of technologies that are coming. So I think it's going to be an evolving process. But I would say that as we're watching the market evolve, I think one thing that we've noticed a lot is the experience on the mobile device is very personal to people. I mean, the device is very personal to you. And so they're very willing to talk about when they have a bad experience or a good experience. That information is all over Twitter. It's in the App Store feedback. And so your customers are one of your best resources to figure out what you're doing wrong. And so I think as we're on this path, I'd highly encourage people to take advantage of social research and also the App Store research to really figure out what are the quick wins that you can make in order to start getting back on the right path for mobile.
Great. So, and we're on the hour. So, thank you very much. I mean, I always sense that whenever we get into discussions around mobile, that we could indeed talk about it for a lot longer. And sorry that we had to cut off. I'm looking at the questions screen here, and there's a gentleman here called Matthew Hoffman who's been sending quotes and things like that, and saying that's the best quote. But he did say great insight. So congratulations to our panel that it has resonated, this discussion with the audience. Well done, gentlemen. He's just telling me here. So thank you. Thank you, Matthew Hoffman, for your kind words. So, I guess it just goes for me to say that if you've got some colleagues that you hope would, or you think that might want to listen to this, we have been recording the entire show. So, over the next couple of hours, I'll start looking over that, and we'll edit it and we'll get it up on TNews, hopefully within the next 12 hours or so, just depending on how long the upload takes and things like that. So, feel free to share the link around. It'll be up on TNews, as I said. It really only goes for me to say thank you very much to our panel. So Nick Vivion, who's in New Orleans today, Alex Kremer, who is in Denver, Dave Thomson, who's in New York. Enjoy the rest of TC Disrupt, and Bill Lawler, who's in San Jose. So thank you very much to our panel, and especially thank you very much to Bynd and to Tealeaf, which is, as I said, is an IBM company, for supporting this particular TnoozLIVE. We'll be back probably in about a month or so. Like I said, we try to make these monthly, bi-monthly. So once again, it will be a discussion on news items, and we'll take a deeper dive into a particular topic. So thanks again to the panel, thanks again to our sponsors, and thanks especially to you, those of you that have listened in. Enjoy the rest of your day, and good luck. Cheers.